Hello and welcome back to Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020. Yes, it has been a while, but we are finally back. I've been very busy with exams lately, but I've only got one left, which is very good news. Anyway, in today's video I'll be showing you the graphics settings that I use in the sim, as many of you guys have been wondering. For reference, I have a mid-range gaming laptop. I'll put my specs up on the screen so you can have a look. I'm just going to go into the graphics settings menu and quickly run through the settings that I use so you guys can use it as a benchmark. Okay, so here we are in the graphics settings menu. We start with the display mode. Of course, I use full screen. There is really no need for you to use anything different than this. Next, we have full screen resolution. I run at 1080p, as any higher causes a massive drop in frames and any lower makes the sim look terrible. 1080p though looks absolutely fine. Render scaling, I leave this to 100. I find that increasing this a little bit has very little visual effect, but has a large effect on performance. Moving on to Vsync, I set this to on and set the frame rate limit to 60 or sometimes to 30. This is just so that any extra performance can be saved to stream or run other programs and doesn't go into getting more frames per second. Next, the DX version, just leave this to DX11, no point in changing it at the moment as it's still under testing. Now moving on to anti-aliasing, I set this to TAA, which is the maximum setting. Any lower and the sim does just look bad. Terrain level of detail, I set this to 150. 150 looks absolutely fine in the sim, so there's no need to change this. Just make sure you don't go below 100 as the sim's visuals just won't look great. Then off-screen terrain precaching, I set this to ultra. This just saves the terrain popping in when you change camera views. This does not affect frame rate, I've found. Then terrain vector detail, I set this to medium. This again looks fine in the sim. Same with most of these settings, any lower than what I have here will dramatically change how the sim looks, and not for the better either. Moving on to buildings, I set these to medium, as from a distance there's not much difference between ultra and medium. So I set it to medium just to gain a couple more frames per second. Trees, I set these to medium and they have the same story as the buildings. Grass and bushes I set to low. I believe you can turn these off, but I do like to see some grasses and bushes, so I just leave it on its lowest setting. Objects level of detail I set to 150 and has the same story as the terrain level of detail. Any lower will make the sim look worse, but any higher will impact your frame rates by quite a bit. Volumetric clouds. Now you spend most of your time in the sky flying through and next to clouds, so set these to ultra because you do want the clouds to look as good as possible. Texture resolution, I set this to medium. In all honesty, I don't know exactly what this does, but medium seems to work perfectly fine. Anisotropic filtering I set to 16 times. This is the highest setting for it, and this along with the texture sampling makes the sim look either brilliant or terrible. My advice, keep it to max. I have found that these also don't really impact the frame rates as much as you think. Texture synthesis I also set to medium. Again, don't know exactly what this does, but medium seems to do the job. Water waves I set to medium. You never really get super close to waves to notice a significant difference between medium and ultra, so just put it to medium just to gain you a couple of frames per second. Next, for shadow maps, terrain shadows and contact shadows, I leave these all to their lowest settings. The shadows with them on the lowest settings look absolutely fine, and in all honesty for each of these I don't know exactly what they do. All I do know is that they are to do with the shadows and they look fine with them on the lowest setting. So put them to the low setting to gain a couple frames per second. Windshield effects, put these from medium to ultra. This setting shows you all the rain on the windshield when it's raining. If you have this off, then you won't see any of that, so I recommend you put this on medium at least. Putting it to ultra will decrease your frames by a few, but between medium and ultra there isn't much of a difference visually, so stick with medium. Put it on ultra if you've got a high-end computer though. Ambient occlusion, cube map reflection and ray marked reflections. I just straight up put these on the lower settings. I haven't found that they make a huge difference in the Sim's visuals, so I've just put them to the lowest just to give myself a couple extra frames per second. Same story with the light shafts, bloom and depth of field. I've also got these on the lower settings, and in all honesty they don't really do much and I don't really notice the difference with them on or off. Then we've got motion blur, lens correction and lens flare. Again, I just turn these to their lower settings just for the sake of getting a few extra frames per second. Then finally we move on to the glass cockpit refresh rate. Even if you have a high-end computer, put this on low. If you put this on ultra, it will decrease your frames by a huge amount. Having this on low does not impact the visuals of the sim, so it's really a no-brainer to put them on low. So there you have it, those are my recommended graphic settings for a mid-range computer. You can now go into your flight simulator and use these settings as a benchmark to get the best performance out of your computer. If there is some specific content that you guys want to see, then please let me know down in the comments and I'll get it done as soon as I can. Thank you so much for watching. If you have enjoyed the video, please don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss any future content. Thank you so much for watching. Goodbye.